gentlemen, welcome back to Women's Wrestling Pioneers. Today, we have Randy Miller. Randy Miller made the 2008 Olympic team where she was Olympic bronze medalist. Randy, how are you?
I'm good. Hi, Shannon. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Okay, we just had an Olympic game, so it's prime time for you because you are an Olympian. And before we kind of dive into asking you questions, what was your, I guess, take on this, the last Olympic cycle that just happened, I don't know, 4, 5, or 6 or 7 days ago?
Oh, I think the women did remarkable. Um, that's my initial thoughts is that we did really good. 4 out of 6 medals is remarkable.
How about the overall? Because not only are you a woman wrestler, you're a wrestler too, but were you able to look at some of the other, like our men's Greco, and we'll jump into that too because you were a part of WCAP. We'll explain what that is hopefully at some point, and then the men's freestyle as well.
Yeah, no, I watched it. I think the men did well, but I know that they are upset about it because they usually do better. And then Greco, I love Greco. Greco is actually my favorite style. I just wasn't allowed to compete in it, and still, if I was wrestling today, I still wouldn't be allowed to compete in it. But at a loss for words for that program. I'm not really sure um, what to say or think about the state of their program.
I want to jump in on something that you just said because I'm a women's wrestling advocate, and I to bury the lead, if you will. Judo has been in the Olympics, I think, since 1968. Maybe women's judo since 1984. I'd have to look it up anyway. You understand what I'm saying? It's like if they got judo, why can't we have Greco? But what are your thoughts on why women could, if not should, be wrestling Greco at the national level, at the world level, and even at the Olympic level? Or why isn't it happening, do you think, in your opinion?
I'm not sure. I heard rumors around not having enough slots. And if they did that, then there wouldn't be enough weights or something like slots in the Olympics, something that has to do with that bureaucracy. And then not dividing the talent in women's because women's wrestling numbers previously, I guess, were too low to divide the talent, but I don't know if that's the case anymore. So those are the two reasons I've heard. But I thought Tokyo was supposed to have women's Greco, and then it didn't. I suppose that has something to do with COVID or something. But I'm not sure. It's probably not a reason. It's just it just hasn't happened. That
Yeah.
what do they say, like in advocacy, when you want something like equal representation, no one ever just gives it to you. Someone needs to be asking for it, and then you have to fight for it, then you get it. And I think right
Right.
now there isn't really a big push for women's Greco, so that's probably why there isn't.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't really heard of it in that way. And similar, or maybe on another note, women's medals in the Olympic Games this last cycle or this last Olympics was on par, if not higher, than men's medals. I think for the women's
That's
USA
always
team.
nice. I just want all the people to know that women's freestyle has typically performed better than men's freestyle. It's in recent years after our lone wolf Jordan Burroughs started medaling at that level, then our men's program started to pick up. But before then, women's wrestling always performed well. We've always been top three in the country or in the world.
And you're
Yeah.
a part of that. And I was speaking to the larger medal count. I think
Mhm.
women USA, I have to look at the numbers again, but I think they were something like plus 50% on the medal. So that
Yeah,
means, yeah,
over half.
I'm talking
Yeah,
about the whole enchilada. Now, you
yeah.
hit on a whole nother point. Yes, the men have won the world title, I think, 2 out of the last 5 years in terms of the world championships. But let's just talk. I got questions for you, but man, you just sparking some different questions. Let's talk about the difference between the world championships and the Olympics from your perspective, because you've been to both. You are a WCAP or military world champion. We'll talk about that a little bit. There's also a world championships, and then there's also the Olympics. In your mind, what's the difference, if there is one? I think there is one, but what's your opinion on the difference or the sameness of the Olympic Games, the world championships, etc.?
The world championships are is an open tournament, meaning that you don't have to qualify your weight or country for the tournament. So if you have a wrestling team, you can show up. And on that alone, you'll get way more participants than you do at the Olympics. And there's a lot of good people and a lot of good countries that don't have the funds or resources to qualify their weights. Not that there isn't stiff competition at the Olympics. Sure, of course, it's the Olympics. However, there's a lot of people that aren't able to go. Where at Worlds, everyone, if you have a team and you can get there, you can go. So that's the main difference between the two. The other one, of course, the Olympics has more prestige than the World Championships because the Olympics encompasses all sports. So people might not know what you're talking about when you say, "Yeah, I won a world title for wrestling," but they know the Olympics because the Olympics encompasses all sports. So it includes everybody. And yes, true, every sport has its singular worlds, but not it's not looked at as the same as prestige. It's just not, people don't understand what worlds means, but they do know what the Olympics means. So the Olympics more prestige, the worlds more people.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to the Olympics for a second, but let's start, I guess, maybe in the beginning for you. So for people that don't know, I've known Randy since at least 2004. It's 2024, so that's 20 going on almost a man. I'm showing my age around here. That's almost a quarter of a century. So in 2004 we met, but let's go even before 2004. When and why did you start wrestling?
I started wrestling in high school. I always was fascinated by wrestling. I saw it, and I just thought, wow, what an interesting thing. Like, wow, that's cool. I don't know anything about it, but that's cool. But my career didn't really pick up until I was cut from the basketball team, and that's when I went to start my wrestling career, really. And I actually went in there to talk to the coach about being a manager. I had spoken to him before about being on a team, but I never stayed. It never stuck with, like, I thought I was going to be this basketball star, and basketball and wrestling's in the same season. So when that wrestling career kind of ended, I was a little bit embarrassed to approach him about being on a team because I had quit 2 times before. So
Oh, wow.
the idea was like I was going to go there and just ask to be a manager, and then figure it out from there. But he said something like, "Okay, yeah, you can. Are you going to stay this time?" So after that was pretty much it. After that, I wrestled.
Okay, and a follow-up to that is where did you wrestle? Because that's important in the larger schemes of women's wrestling in general, or female wrestling in general.
I'm from Texas. I began my wrestling career in Texas, and back then we had girls sanctioned wrestling.
And that's for many people. Who knows what people know these days? You can Google a lot of this stuff, but I think Texas was the second state to
Yeah.
sponsor high school girls wrestling. And now it's something like, is it 45 or 46 or something like that? But this
Hmm.
is way back when. I don't even know what year they sanctioned it. It had to be like 98, 99, something
I
like
think it
that, right?
was 98.
Okay, 98. And so we're looking at 25 plus years of them sanctioning. And then, of course, I think Hawaii was actually before that. Do you remember? Can you tell us about what that was like? Were you in it when it was sanctioned in terms of the girls' state? And what did that look like in terms of the
Yeah.
training and the practice and the girls' coaches, et cetera? Because it may be the same or different than it is right now.
Yeah, no, I was in wrestling actually a few years after it was sanctioned, so it had a
Okay.
couple years of growth. Women's wrestling grew pretty fast down here because of that. I know that there is a lot of apprehension of parents allowing their daughters to participate in a combat sport with boys, but down here, that not being the case, we had full rosters of teams. The rule was that boys and girls could not practice. Well, we could practice together, but we weren't supposed to do combat or anything with each other. I think most teams did that anyway. My coach was a stickler for the rules. He did not. So I wrestled the other girls on the team, even though we weren't really close to weight. Oh no, like one year I had somebody that was close to my weight. I don't know, like these partial seasons. But when I stuck to it, when I was actually in it for real this time, we weren't close to weight, but we made it work.
Let me do another follow up to that one too. With regard to what you just said there, how many girls did you train with on a regular basis, and or did you train with boys because of what you just said in terms of weight classes and whatnot?
Okay, let me go back through my memory bank. Like I said, I had a couple of partial seasons, and those I don't remember quite as well, but I do
Okay.
remember having girls there, and there were more girls um than any other time. But at
Oh
that
wow.
point, I had quit the team. But he had recruited quite a bit of people that were that wanted to participate, but not a lot lasted. They Texas is huge on sports.
Right.
So I pretty much whoever came and participated maybe participated that year and then went on to whatever sport they were actually doing.
Right.
Wrestling is very niche. It's very difficult. It's a lot of different things you got to get used to at once. I want to say when I came back out, I had someone close to my size and we just trained together. And then when I was on the team, no, we trained together, but we weren't close to size. And I didn't really train with the boys at all.
And for that, just for so we can hear it and we can see it, the year. What year were we talking about? Because I say that to say this. Some girls right now tell me they have 2 to 3 girls on their team, and maybe it's a smaller community. Maybe they've got 16 or 17 boys and 2 or 3 girls. Back then, this is 20 plus years ago. What were the girls' numbers like in Texas at your high
So
school?
2001, it was just me and another girl.
Okay.
Okay. But my school wasn't the norm. All the other schools had every weight filled.
Oh wow, wow,
Hmm
that's incredible.
that
Because
wasn't the. Hmm?
if you think of now where like depending on where you go, even in Illinois and Wisconsin, depending on where you go, you can have 2 to 3 girls on team, and then you can have hotbeds or sections of teams like you're saying where there's 15 plus, 20
Hmm
plus. Your friend and teammate Liz, man, she messed around and had in Illinois 80 kids on her team the first
Yeah.
day of practice. I think it went down to like 45 or 50, but still 45 or
Right.
50
Yeah.
is, that's like a ridiculous number. All right. So let's go back to the Olympics. Let me just read
hmm
this. You are a 2000 Olympic bronze medalist, which is an inspiration to me and many others. Can you talk about your experience in making the Olympic team, part one, competing in the Olympic Games, part two, and winning the Olympic bronze medal, part three?
So, can you ask me the first question again?
The first one, what was that experience like making the Olympic team?
So making the team was a very happy experience, but I definitely um felt like the job was half done. Like I was happy. I remember jumping on both my coaches because I was very happy that it happened, but I did feel like the pressure's on. The person who I had beat out for the team was a former Olympic medalist herself. So I felt that there's no way I could go there and not do just as good. It's always been my motto, and something my mentors really like put into my head was if I'm going to the Olympics, it's because I believe I'm in gold medal contention, not just to go. And to have somebody that was a medalist, I really felt like if I wasn't going there to win or felt like I could win, I have no business going. So making the team, very happy, celebrated that night, but felt like the job was half done.
Okay. Part two is competing in the Olympic Games. And we kind of touched on it a little bit with regard to the participation. Typically, it's about 16 countries, right? Versus the worlds where it can be 32, 33, or
Yeah.
whatever. But
Yes.
what for you, what was the competing in the Olympic Games, or what was that like? What was that experience like?
I felt ready. Here in the United States, we have a lot of resources. I had gone all over the world wrestling. I had already wrestled these girls. I knew what I was getting into. There is no surprises except for maybe the one girl I didn't wrestle, which wasn't surprises. I just, lost. But I felt ready. I had wrestled these girls. I knew that if I kept it together, I kept my mentality about me and go out there and did what I did in the practice room, that I would do well that day.
And then part three of that question is winning an Olympic bronze medal. Because if I remember correctly, I can't think of her name, but it was a Canadian gal. I think you guys wrestled maybe the year before or a year and a half before at the World University Championships. She kind of maybe did a little something to you there, but you did a little something to her. So is that the same person, in fact?
Yeah, that's the same person.
Yeah, I can't, her name is hard to say. I don't know how to say her name.
So we wrestled, I think, at University Worlds, and I lost pretty handedly. Um, and there was quite a bit of time before University Worlds and then Olympics. So I was a completely different person by the time that I wrestled her at the Olympics. However, I was nervous about it. She is a world champion the year before, up a weight. We both went down a weight because back then there was only 4 weight classes. So it's not, there was no size difference. I didn't feel like, okay, well, I have the upper hand because I came down a weight. No, we both came down.
Right, right.
Um, I was nervous about that match, and I actually remember going out there preparing for the loss. Like I
Oh
was
wow.
preparing myself for or how bad it was going to hurt because I was convinced I was going to lose. I was telling myself like, hey, it's okay. Nobody ever thought you'd be here. It doesn't matter. Just go out there and have fun. It's okay. I was preparing myself for what I thought was inevitable. However, you shake hands and they blow the whistle and the match is on. I think I scored within the first 10 seconds, and that completely changed how I was viewing that match. So sometimes, like, yeah, your mind can be tricky that way. My dad says all the time, you don't lean in the pain. You don't lean in the pain. So I was preparing, trying not to feel the pain of what I thought was going to happen. But luckily, what I practice every day and how I practice took over. And I scored within the first 10 seconds because that's how I practice. When we go live, I try to put points on the board. And that right there was it. I was like, okay, let's try to win this. Let's try to win it.
So I've known you for a minute, but I'd never heard that one portion that you said, and I want to just kind of rehash that a little bit because I'm a big believer in self-talk and kind of believing that you can do it and seeing other things. But I also know things creep into your mind sometimes, and you're doing your best to thwart and go to the other way. But some people will tell you whatever you just said with regard to, I kind of felt this way right before the match, and then it sometimes, what is that called? Uh, it
Ne-
happens.
yeah, negative self-talk. No, I'm typically not like that. Like
Okay.
I'm very big into believing and saying in what you're believing. But the truth of the matter is, I'm matched up to the girl who won worlds last year. I'm
Right.
matched up with the girl who's beaten me before. I'm matched
Right.
up with the girl who I hadn't really wrestled before now since worlds. Um, and I did everything I could to be an Olympian and to be in gold medal contention. I'm talking 8-hour training days, sucked my body down to 63 kilos. I went through a lot to be on that stage. And yeah, my mind and my body wanted me to be okay after because I thought I was gonna lose. so
It's
so
an a testament. Sorry, it's an a testament to just you in general, Randy Miller. Because the Randy Miller that I know, man, it's like you epitomize everything. Because whatever was going on in your brain when the whistle blew, it went right back to whatever you thought you
time
were
to
gonna
go.
do.
Yeah, I'm
You know
not
what
gonna
I'm
lay
saying?
down. Like,
But it's a great story though, because I think some people will hear this and they will think, well, it's abnormal. No, you just said at the dang Olympic Games, those thoughts went through your mind. But your training, you trusted the process of your training, and your training led you to actually where you wanted to go in that particular match.
and I tell this to my girls now. I'm a coach now. For the listeners that maybe don't know, is I wrestle the same way whether I think I'm gonna win or lose.
Okay. Okay.
It doesn't change. I'm gonna try to win. Most of the times I do think I'm gonna win, but whether you're the former world champ or you're an up and comer, I'm gonna wrestle you the same way. Either are capable of beating me, and I'm capable of beating either of them.
So you have a lot of wrestling experience, and it's like I'd like for the whole world to know about it. That's why we're sort of doing these podcasts, especially with yourself, people who I like to refer to as women's wrestling's pioneer. I actually worked at an Olympic training center. It was called the United States Olympic Education Center. That's where you and I met. I was at that world championship. Drunier or something. Is that how you say her? I don't
Yeah,
know.
Martine de Grunier,
Yeah,
world
something with a D.
champion. I think she's won a few times.
Man, she won at least two senior worlds, and
Yeah,
I think she won World Universities twice. So, I mean,
she's
she was,
good. She's one of their best. One of their best.
and you and
One
you
of
and you you chopped her down like a tree. So I'm very proud of you for doing that. But getting back to how we met, and then you're part of your journey. I was a part of your journey, but you were at
them.
Olympic Training Center 1, and then you were at Olympic Training Center 2,
Hmm.
and then you went to the WCAT. There's a lot going on there, but tell us about the progression from one place to the next, if you can, and your experiences. Because I flat out told people I didn't know what I was doing when I first got into women's wrestling. And so it was all wrong. And I had to relearn how to teach and coach to women. And so I think there are some coaches that are in that position now, and they don't even really know it. I talk to kids all the time, and they're just like, yeah, my coach doesn't even talk to me, which is a whole nother story. But that might have been me back in the day. So can you explain the progression from one training center to the next training center and then getting to the world stage? And then just, I don't know if you can describe all the work you put in. You did say you worked 8 hours a day for training, but that people may not even grasp that. They kind of brush that off. 8 hours a day is no joke, but the transition from one training center to the next. And then prior to that, I think, were you in Illinois, or where were you prior to?
Oh yeah, I was well, I can it might be easier to start from the beginning. So I started my career in high school as a senior, like when I
Okay.
actually stuck with it. And I pretty much went to the only school that recruited me, and that was a small junior college in Kansas, which to my parents seemed like a bad idea. It's this out of state junior college that is gonna we're gonna have to pay more for out of state and all this stuff because you want to wrestle. Um, and then
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
they I'm like, yeah, this is what I think I want to do and all of this stuff or whatever. Ultimately, my mom will give me her 2 cents, but she does let me make decisions for myself.
Hmm.
And luckily, that worked out for me. I wasn't the strongest student, and going to the junior college really helped me kind of bridge that gap between high school and being a student at a high school and in college. I kind of managed my time. There was all these extra classes, all these extra help, small classes. Teachers helped me out. So I think if I would have went to a university straight off the bat, I probably would have failed out. If I'm being honest, it took me a while to learn the maturity and the organization to be a good college student. So I went there, and Neosho had a good men's team, and they had won junior college national championship titles as a team. And coaches, my first freestyle coaches, were on that men's team the year previous, but I guess they graduated, aged out. I'm not really sure, but those guys were Romanian junior world champions.
Oh, wow.
So my first and I had another coach who wasn't a Romanian junior world champion, but I don't want to leave him out of the story because he helped me out too. But
Right.
the point being is that my first taste of real freestyle, I got it from people that did freestyle, that were good at it. So my first laces and how to put together my takedowns um with my turns and all that, I learned from somebody who specialized in freestyle. At the time, you don't realize how big that is, but
Right.
that's
Right.
big. That year that I had them, that did a lot for me. So from there, I spent 2 years there, and I trained with them and another man named Johnny. And then while I was there, I met a young woman who became my one of my really good friends named Mary Kelly. And Mary is an Illinois somewhere Hall of Famer for her wrestling and has a strong long lineage of wrestling in her family. And she was the best wrestler I had ever seen, guy or girl. Like I just didn't see throws and props and shots and things like that from anybody. And she told me, and she was at the junior college with me, she ended up going there. She told me that her father was starting a program in Illinois. And I was all like, I gotta go where you were
Mhm.
training. I gotta go see what that's about. So I went there for a year and I learned a lot. And he was one of the first coaches, you were the other one, that told me that it's not, don't worry about cutting all this weight. You need to learn to wrestle, and then we'll figure out what weight you should be going. Because when I got there, I was really wanted to be a lower weight. Was having trouble with it. And he's like, don't worry about all of that right now. Let's just learn to wrestle. You're gonna do fine at either weight. Um, so I went there and I trained with him for a year. I did fairly well at the international level, or yeah, senior level. I wouldn't say international level yet. And then the USOEC opened up, and it just seemed like an opportunity that I shouldn't pass up if I could get in. So me and my other two teammates applied for the program, and we were all ecstatic when all three of us got in. In
Was
hindsight,
Was the other one Amy Borgnini?
Yeah,
Okay.
Amy, me, and Mary. In hindsight, we realized like if it hadn't have been the first year, we didn't have the accolades to get in that second year. So again,
Yeah.
like the universe kind of working with me towards this goal of mine. So then I meet you. I go to the USOEC, um, and I'm not sure what happened there. I think maybe my teammates. Yeah, I think actually that is it. So I had a roommate who was really super dedicated to wrestling. Her name was Sandy Doe, who showed me like the season, and it was the Iowa Hawkeyes, and I just started to see how like other people trained and how they looked at things and like compared it to what I was doing, and I wasn't doing nearly enough for the goals I said I had, you know. So that kind of started to change my training. I started trying to wrestle like that, and I couldn't because I didn't have like the lungs for it. Um, but that was the start of me trying to figuring out like, hey, there's another level here, and I need to figure out how to get there. I would say though the biggest decision that was the biggest change that kind of turned me from who I met you the first year to who I became and who I think I am now is choosing to go to the Olympic Training Center over the summer. Um, when I was deciding how to move forward with my career, I I lost all my gains whenever I went home. I would go home,
Mm,
hang out with family, gain
okay.
weight. Weight was has always been an issue for me. So being at the USOEC where we were at coaching, I had accessibility to call the coach at the Olympic Training Center and ask if I could train there for the summer, and he said, "Yeah." Um, and that was the biggest game changer. I went out there, I kept up with my training, I got better. Because I was there and I was one of the only heavyweights that was there training Iris Smith, world champ Iris Smith. Me and her spent all summer training together. There was no one else for her to really train with, and
Wow.
for me, we were the only heavyweights that were there consistently.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and there were other heavyweights there, but they would be smaller, sometimes bigger, or they were middleweights. But me and Iris trained quite a bit. So she asked me to come with her to Worlds that year, and
2005.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when I went, that's when I was like, okay, the way the women warmed up, the way they were cooling down, the way it was no nonsense, the way they were just getting their weight off. Um, it didn't look easy, and they were just doing their job. And then
Hmm.
the wrestling I saw is like, this is how I want to end my career. Here, the Olympics, this is how I want to end my career. And again, like all these things happen. Yeah, I wanted a goal. I had a goal. I had a dream and I was chasing it. But it's by chance that my first freestyle coach are junior world champions. It's by chance I get into the USOEC program. I'm no Fargo nothing, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's by
Yeah.
chance um that I Iris is going to world. She was third string, one and two got hurt. And then
Did she win it that year?
yeah,
That's
that's that's
crazy.
that's
That's
how I'm gonna end
crazy.
it. Then not only that, she
Oh my god.
freaking wins worlds.
Yeah.
So I was a changed woman after then.
Yeah.
And her story, like they were not, I don't know, people just didn't I think respect how well she would do there. I mean, I guess maybe because she was the third person, but I didn't care what anybody had to say about me. I saw somebody third string
Right.
who everybody said that wasn't going to do whatever, go out there and win worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. I didn't know. I didn't know you for a million years. I haven't heard that from Iris. I'm gonna interview her too, but I didn't. I realized I knew she wasn't number one, but I didn't. I thought she lost in the world team trials. I didn't realize she was third. So that means she was on the national team. That means she was getting a stipend. But yeah, that is an inspirational story in it and of itself. But let me. I don't know how you're gonna feel about this, but you were because there's back in the day there were four weight classes and you did start off at 72. They've now changed it to 76. Now 72 is a weight under for the non-Olympic weights. Back in the day, there wasn't. It was just four, and now there's six. But you went 72, 67, and then got yourself down to 63. So when you were training with Iris, you probably were 72 kilos, but
Hmm.
eventually you make the Olympic team at basically two weights below.
Mhm.
What was your decision to kind of do those things? Was it inspired by the worlds, or what was the?
Well, yeah, first learning how to train, right? I think we think we are working hard and we are, but there's another level. And I think in each step you're at. But if you haven't been exposed to that other level, you don't know it exists.
Right.
So it wasn't that I wasn't working hard, but I needed to be working harder. And at the time, because I wasn't exposed to the kind of work that I needed to do, um, I just thought I was working hard. I was doing what everybody else was doing. But like I said, when I go to the training center and the practices by the warm up is harder than my whole workout that I've been doing, that tells me something, right? Or I go to Worlds and I see the way people are warming up, and it's not there's no joke, like that tells me something about these are the world contenders. It tells me that there needs to be some changes. So that first thing's that learning how to work, learning what that looks like for me. When I figured that out, it my weight came down at least one weight class. That
Okay.
that was that wasn't hard. Um Secondly, where was I in the story? Secondly, diet and nutrition played a huge part, but I didn't really learn that until later. Um, so yeah. Secondly, I made my weight, and I was doing it in a way that wasn't conducive to high performance,
Right.
at all. Like I could win some good matches, but when it came to like the end of the day in the semis finals, I felt like I was running in water. You know that feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Um, or a little tired. And my coach at the Olympic Training Center had me meet with a nutritionist. And that was like night and day once I got my diet under control and learned how to manipulate my weight with my water intake as
Okay.
opposed to calorie intake.
Before I forget, I know, there's two people maybe that we didn't mention so far. Tony Deanne, he's actually a coach now too. I know you did some training with him, and then man, I don't even know how to say Levi's last name, but
YK, yeah.
yeah, that dude. Those two, tell us about how they were in a part of your journey to getting to where you got as an Olympic level wrestler.
So hand fighting is a huge part of my strategy, mat strategy, and how I use to wear down my opponents and open up my offense. I probably learned my hand fighting the most working with Tony, because he would hand fight with me. I learned my chains and combinations, just like there's ones and twos and threes and fours with takedowns and the way you
Mm-hmm.
move and the way you use the edge. The same in hand fighting. Like if I want an underhook, I don't get it by getting an underhook. There's three or four steps before the underhook,
Right.
right?
That's crazy though, the way you're saying it, because a lot of people don't know that. It's like
Right. Yeah.
you're breaking it down, which is great.
And I would say I really started to hone that skill with Tony because he was a new coach and someone that still kind of wanted to wrestle and probably was deciding whether or not if he was going to wrestle. So
Mm.
he was always down to do some wrestling before and after practice. So I really honed that technique with him. With Levi, he helped me put a plan to the madness, right? I eventually spoke with Levi because I felt like I was plateauing. I felt like I had a surge up. I did
Mhm.
really well. I was beating the number one girl, not consistently, but I had done it. And then all of a sudden, it not the same. Like people I've beaten are beating me, not
Mhm.
really beating the number one girls anymore. Having issues with my weight. And I kind of asked him what his opinion. He was working with his wife, Patricia Miranda, at the time. She is an Olympic bronze medalist and I don't know, a few time world medalist, and I think a world champion there somewhere, I'm sure. Who also went to Yale Law School and Stanford. So if someone says that you can't do it all, it's a lie. I know someone who does. But I digress. He was working with his wife and a few other women. I was kind of interested in and just wanting to know his opinion about things. I digress. I asked all my teammates that were doing well. Well, he wasn't my teammate, but Katie, Patricia, um, Christy. I asked everyone, and all the people I name are world medalists.
Right.
And Levi was one of the people I asked, and he said, let me think about it. So he does that, and he comes back with like a legal pad of things he thinks I need to change, for me to be where I am, to where I want to go. And you know what? He wasn't wrong. He was right. Like little, and we started working together after he deliberated with the women that he worked with if it was okay to take on another person. I mean, like keep it real is very competitive. We
Right.
all are trying to achieve what is the impossible, because none of us, have Olympic gold medals. So we're sitting there trying to achieve the impossible, and he wanted to talk it over with the women he had already committed to helping, if he could bring on someone else. So they did, of course, and we worked together and we checked off those items one by one. And by the time we were done with the last one, I was on a plane headed to China.
Yeah, it's
He
crazy.
had hit the nose, like he had figured it out. I don't He had a good mind for logistics and planning, probably why he's a good lawyer. He has a way of kind of figuring things out and going through all the scenarios and what's the best efficient way. And like I said, by the time we got to the last one, I was on a plane headed to China.
Congratulations on that stories. Kudos to everybody involved with that, but more especially to you because you actually did the work. And to sometimes I think sometimes this can people get a little bit tricky about, he was giving you constructive criticism, it sounded like, and then you guys worked that plan together and it actually worked. So, because sometimes athletes may not necessarily believe that, there are things I have to work on to actually get better. And sometimes the coach can actually see that. And when you work together, there's like this synergism. With regard to the W cap, when you were talking about Iris was in the W cap. Well, tell people, I know what it is. Tell people that may not know what the W cap is, and then how is that a part of your career?
So the WCAP program is an athletic program attached to the U.S. Armed Forces. You don't necessarily have to be Army to be a part of WCAP. That if you're an elite athlete, the Army or the Armed Forces will support your journey into being an Olympian. Um, there's standards. The standards are different for every team. For the Army's WCAP program at the time, for a woman wrestler, you had to be top three in the
Oh,
country. You had to be national team.
wow. Yeah,
Uh,
that's high.
you know, yes, it is. They've changed it since
Okay.
then. It's a lot more better now, I think, in regards to building a team. Like if you are top three at a world qualifier, like U20, U23s, if you are an All-American at college, you can be qualified for it. They have a lot of different tiers
Okay.
that you can be and now be a part of the program. So it's a lot different now and it's a lot better. It's a lot more inclusive that way,
Do
in
you
my
feel
opinion.
like that? How do you? Because I don't know if it was you and Iris talking at one time, or maybe Iris shared this with Jennifer. A lot of people in our group, I say our group, either at the USOAC or related to the USOAC, because even on the men's side, people like Spencer, there's a lot of people on the men's and the women's side from the USOAC, and then without again burying the lead, Ivan Ivanov was one of the coaches, and he would tell his guys, you know what, when I was in Bulgaria, I was in the Bulgarian W cap. And so I think that's what inspired some of those guys. But anyway, getting back to Iris and what she said this was years ago. She said it may not necessarily be for a graduating high school senior. It's got to be for someone kind of like you said that maybe is in that top tier. What's your opinion on that now? Because that maybe had been then when she said that.
So I would say by the time I left, and this is something like I try to illustrate to my team, that my last competition was the 2016 Olympic team trials. That's not even 10 years ago. So I
Yeah.
do really remember what it was like to try to manage and balance all these things and hold myself accountable, and what it felt like and looked like when I wasn't, and what it felt and looked like when I was, and the difference kind of makes or breaks you a little bit in that way. Um, I forgot the question. Hold on. I was circling back to it.
W
Oh,
cap and
yeah. So I think by the time I left it, which was like 8 years ago, I wouldn't consider it a developmental program.
yeah, that's what I
For
meant.
Yeah, for me, WCAP was like, here, we're gonna give you everything you need. Like you're gonna have a great training facility. You're gonna have partners. You're gonna have coaches that are gonna be there in the corner for you, and you're gonna have coaches that are gonna run your practice. But you need to figure out what you need to do. Like it's not it's not someone saying, hey, like breaking down like, hey, next match you need it just wasn't that kind of program. And honestly, like for me at that time, I probably wouldn't have listened to much difference. Like I had a way I won matches, I had a
Right.
way I cut weight, I had a way that I prepared. And I really didn't want um a lot of say in that. Like I just that so it works for me. Like if
Right.
you take care of everything else, I don't have to worry about healthy food. I don't have to worry about partners. I don't have to worry about getting to competitions. That's crazy. That's awesome. Who
Right.
gets that?
Yeah. It basically is almost like and then you got to be careful, like you said, but almost like a professional athlete, where a lot of these resources are actually they're built into
Mhm.
the entire plan. Segue into women's wrestling college coaching. You did a couple of different stints, one with Brandy
Mhm.
in Limestone, and then now your current position as the head coach of Texas Women's University. Tell us about both of those experiences and kind of where you are right now.
So even before Brandy, I worked at McMurray College.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
right.
I was
That
an
weren't we
assistant
were
there.
like an hour from each other, right?
Yeah.
I was in Illinois too. I forgot about that. Wow.
So
So
I was
all
an
of
assistant.
your women's wrestling coaching experiences, just kind of tie those in a bow for us.
So, like working at McMurray, he really let me take on the women's team and run practice and do their practices and play practices. And he took care of everything else. So I really didn't get to do or learn much administration side, but I did get to kind of start seeing and learning how I wanted to teach wrestling. So and he was really fun and nice to work with. It was a great working environment. But we ended up both leaving that program within a year. For me, I'm not sure why he left it. I think maybe he got a better position somewhere, and his family comes first. So whenever you're in a position where it's going to help your family, everybody understands that.
Right.
Um, for me, remember hearing that the school wasn't going to be around, and it's not anymore.
It ain't. Nope.
And that's kind of where I was like, okay, I need to find a job. Like the school ended up going under like 2 years later, but
Okay.
I was under impression that it was about to happen. So I
Right.
started looking for a job and getting out of there. Um, and then so they did have a program for another couple of years, and the guys that took it over did a good job. I
Yeah.
remember they have like a few good girls, and they were building the program. So that's what I learned from there, just learning how to teach, learning how to manage a practice, program a practice, and it was a lot of fun. um Being an assistant coach under Brandy, again, learned a lot. She taught me a lot about travel logistics, administration, and um, let me have the reins a little bit sometimes with planning and running practice, which a lot of head coaches don't let you do. So I thought that was really nice of her. Plus, I learned all of that other stuff that I had no idea how to prepare for a tournament
Right.
and get all our stuff in and to have the food and all of that. I had no idea about that. I learned all that from Coach Brandy, Brandy Rosenbrock. Or wait, no, Green.
Yeah. That's why I didn't say her last name. She got married and then
Yeah, Brandy Green. And now I'm in a head coach position where I love where I'm at. I love being here. Any head coaching position you take on, there's a lot of learning to do with how to work within the school's ecosystem. This is year 4 for me, year 3 with the team, and I feel pretty way more comfortable with all the admin work I have to do or had to do, like all the paperwork that needs to be done. So now I'm able to kind of really get into the mud with where I want to take the team. First it's like learning my girls plus learning the school. Then, okay, I got an idea. But then we bring in another whole group of girls, year 2. It's another big recruiting class. And then creating the ecosystem with them and still learning what to do at the school. And now I feel year 3 where we kind of have a culture, we have a set ways. We've had the hard talks with each other, me with them, then them with me. And I just feel like we're going to be hitting the years where I think we'll really, really grow with our success.
just to follow up to that, Congratulations on everything you just said with regard to when you first started way back at Neosho all the way to the progression now where you're a head coach. But I want to talk specifically about that progression. What would you say to a young lady who's 22, 23, 24, 25, who has aspirations of being a head college coach for women's wrestling?
I would
In terms of
say
the preparation piece, I guess that's a better way to frame it.
preparation.
Yeah.
That wants to be a head coach.
Yes.
I know that no job is too big for you or too little. Um, you're gonna be managing the budget and doing the laundry.
Yeah. For real. Hey.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to delegate tasks. It's not mean to do. Um, and don't be afraid to have the same standards you had for yourself as an athlete, for your athletes, and for yourself as a coach.
It's great to see more women getting involved on the coaching side. I love that. Administration is the next level. And then hopefully, knock on wood, at USA Wrestling and at United World Wrestling, where we've got decision makings at the table. I think we're starting to go on that progression. Last question for you. We've been on for a minute, but you're Randy Miller, so you get extra special time. And this is a tricky question. I don't know how this is gonna land with you, but what will it take for USA to consistently beat Russia on the men's side and Japan on the women's side?
I'll start with the women's side because I just feel like I'm better versed to talk about that. And it kind of will merge into the men's side. So watching this year matches, I thought, like I said, I thought the girls did really, really good. The women, I shouldn't say girls, the women did really, really good and had some great wrestling and a lot of like active wrestling. The way that we wrestle over here, it's very offensive, it's very in your face, it's very like high energy. And
Hmm.
I don't know if I've always seen that, out of us, but I did see it this year where we're getting points on the board and
Right.
it's working. Um, when it came to the matches that we lost, I it was clear to me that they had a plan. Like it was clear that Helen was watched and they had a plan to deal with her. It
Right.
was clear that Kennedy was watched and they had a plan. The plan is I can see it clear as day.
Right.
Like um so I think that's the next step for us. I don't know. I'm not in their room. I don't know what's going on, but when it comes to people I'm just going to beat, great. We've worked for that. We've earned that. We've got the resources for that to be prepared. But when it comes to somebody that is challenging or I'm iffy about, I think maybe we should be heavily scouting like they're heavily scouting us. We should know them like they know us. There should be a plan. And I think that would make or close that gap, which is a small gap.
Right.
We're right
Right.
there. We're right there of just maybe going into that match not only aware but feeling prepared to execute a plan if needed. If things are going well, things are going well. But my corner person who's out there with me, I would like for to them to know, okay, when things are going awry, hey, make sure you're underhooking whatever, or like actively like a plan. Like let's start working the plan. I don't know if that made sense.
It does. I'm curious though because, and then I don't even normally ask this. Sometimes it just pops up, but to that answer, and then it's a follow up kind of, but a different question in general. Do you think the freestyle folk style component has anything to do with it, at least for the women? It could be for the men too, but more specifically for the women.
Well, maybe, but not so much with this team. I say that because no, three of the Olympians are career freestyle. They've been at freestyle since they were little girls.
Right.
So I wouldn't say them having to wrestle folk style because they didn't.
Right. Yes.
They were their career freestyle. I think as for the other matches, perhaps, but they're veterans, so I just don't. They're far removed from their folk style roots. So unless you're saying that that because they haven't been wrestling freestyle since they were kids, that's why they didn't medal. But I don't think that's the reason. I don't. I don't think that's the reason. I don't think because they didn't wrestle freestyle since from an earlier age is a reason why they lost the matches we saw at all.
Yeah, I guess it's a more of, I don't think that either, but a bigger picture. In other words, like the depth. And then I say this sometimes, this is something to think about. Is it true? Is it accurate? Who the heck knows? But if your six is as good as your number one, that's there's something to that.
Yeah.
Where if your
No.
six gets teched by number five and five gets tech, you know what I mean? It just goes
Yeah.
up the ladder, and you've only got one person who's really. And this, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if your six is as good as your number one, that's a different model.
Yeah. Um. So sure, with our current team, may perhaps if they felt like they were being challenged more, that could have changed the outcome. I'm not sure though.
Yeah,
I'm not sure though.
I'm
I
not
do
sure
think
either.
I do think that we we could sell freestyle more at a younger age, for
Man,
sure.
I created something now. Since you said that, free publicity, 5 for 1. And I don't know if it'll work. Spend 5 minutes a day on one freestyle series as a folk style wrestler while you're in high school. I think the guys could actually do that too. If you're gonna do sprints after practice every day on your own, why couldn't you be working on some freestyle technique on your own every single day? Something that you maybe aren't even gonna use in your folk style season, right? It's 5 minutes a day, but when you add that up over the course of the year, now if you do freestyle or Greco in the spring, man, you've already got, hours of practice on that particular skill. That's just an idea. Who knows if it will work, but I think it's something worth actually thinking about. Randy Miller, anything else you got for us? Let me see. Did I cover everything? I think I did. Any closing thoughts on the world of women's wrestling or just Randy Miller in general?
No, just that I'm really happy with how the women did. Overall as a country in all sports at the Olympics.
Yeah,
And
that was great.
it was really fun to watch. And I felt pride the whole time watching. And I'm really happy with how the women did. I would have to say that I thought we would do well, but I am still surprised that they still pull it off. It's one thing to think you can or think you can't, but to go out there and actually do it is something quite different. And I'm just really happy with how they did, and I hope they are proud of themselves.
Randy Miller, I'm happy that I had a chance to talk to you today, go over some things, and just happy about your career in general. You're an inspiration to me, and I think you're an inspiration to a lot of other people as well. So thank you, Randy.